Hi guys, it's Coach Keisha speaking, giving you love, hugs, and realness. So some of you may have seen my TikTok. I had it on TikTok and I also posted it to my Facebook and my Instagram page. And it was just a brief excerpt regarding a conversation that I had with my son. Something happened and I responded and I had commentary about it. And my son was like, "Oh, mom, that's toxic. You're toxic." And I was just like, "Wow, that's not toxic, at least in my world." And I was talking about, how I grew up. I'm sorry, I'm moving around because the ring light is in my eyes, but never mind that. So I'm telling him about my childhood and how I grew up and what I see as normal versus what he sees as toxic. Now, a lot of times, I told you before, toxic is an overused word, right? Not only is it an overused word, it's not always used in the right context because toxic can only be something that is necessarily not good for you. But in this case, the dismissal that I had in my mind was good for me. It was better for my mental health. So we talked more about it and I posed a question about, are your kids able to have a conversation with you and discuss their issues or how they see things or to give you feedback, whether it's negative or positive? And the reason why I posed that question is because when I was talking to someone else about it, they were just like, "Oh my God, you allowed your son to say that to you." And I was just like, I didn't have any problem with it. And the reason why I didn't have any problem with it is because I really wanted to understand his perspective and I wanted him to understand mine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that having a conversation with your children, even as minors, they have a voice, they have a thought process, and it's good for us to understand where each other's thoughts are coming from. He wasn't loud, he wasn't disrespectful to me, he wasn't cursing, he wasn't doing anything. He was just telling me what he thought about the situation. And what I told him is that I don't think that everything is toxic. My feedback is that when I'm talking to a lot of younger adults, if there's anything they do not agree with, they consider it to be toxic, and that's unfair. There are situations that are toxic. There are situations where they're uncalled for and you can make the necessary changes. Those are not toxic. Toxic is something that's it's inherently bad for you. It disturbs your equilibrium, your spirit, everything else that's going on, and it's not beneficial to you in the long term or the short. Something that just may not be for you doesn't necessarily mean it's toxic. And so when we had that conversation, we were able to air those things out. The reason for the short video is because to me it was humorous. It was like, oh my gosh, everything I say and I do is considered toxic, and that's not what it is. But what I enjoy most is opening up that dialogue between me and my son. And I do that with other minors as well. We open up the dialogue to understand perspective and to meet in the middle. Sometimes when young adults are growing, they think they know everything. They have the answer for everything. I know this, I know this, I know that. And we've all been there. And so as we're helping them to get through the liminal period of being who they were, which was children, and going into where they're going to be, which is adults, that middle period of, adolescence going into young adulthood, you have to help them to express themselves, to think critically, and to be able to articulate, because a lot of times when you're asking a young adult a question like, I don't know. They don't want to go through the process of explaining. And so creating a safe space for them to be able to express themselves allows them to express themselves. And so I posed the question to parents: are your children able to communicate with you openly and honestly? Everyone had different opinions. If you were to ask a parent right now, they'll be like, oh yeah, they can talk to me about anything. But can they? Really, in the true sense, can they talk to you about everything regarding them? things you may not want to hear? Can they give you feedback on how you handle your day-to-day life in regards to your parenting with them? It's a hard piece because we as parents, we want to believe that we're doing everything right. But you also have to think about this. There's no instruction manual to being a parent. There's no one size fit all that works. And this is parenting, right? So every child is different. Their needs are different. Their personalities are different. And so as we are parents, caregivers, and even teachers, we have to cater to each child differently. We say we don't want to do it and we don't do it, but the reality of it is we have to, because every child's not going to respond the same. They don't need the same care. They don't need the same concern. I mean, the basic needs of food and shelter and clothing, yes. But in terms of what their needs are, how they communicate, how they give and receive information, how they retain information, how they give and receive love. We have to be able to speak to all facets of that, right? And so as parents, we want to believe that, okay, well, I learned to do it this way. My parents did it this way, and I'm providing their basic needs. I'm doing a great job. We may not be. And what I mean by we may not be, it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. We don't always hit the mark. We believe one thing, and then sometimes our children may have a different outlook. Think about how we are or were with our own parents. Our parents may have believed that they did everything right. And while we are thankful for being provided for, there are areas where our parents missed the mark. And we gravitate towards believing that it was normal. And as I learned with talking to my son, that's not normal. Okay, so what worked for my mother in the 80s when I was growing up may not work for you in 2021. So now I have to adjust my approach, and I have to adjust my outlook. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that anything my mother did was necessarily horrible or bad. It just means that the times have changed. And so as a parent now in 2021, I have to adjust. And talking to my child is what helped with that adjustment. And so as parents, this is what we need. We need to keep that ongoing dialogue and rapport with our children in order for them to communicate with us what their needs are. If we don't do it now, they grow up into adults who never know what their needs are. And they go from person to person or situation to situation, and they're wanderers because they don't know how to articulate their needs, ask for what they want, or even to receive what they need. What you need is different from what you want. We can tell you what we want, whether it's clothes, a house, a car, anything material. We can tell you what we want. We can't always tell you what we need, the things that are on the inside of us. What do you need? Do you need more affection? Do you need to be heard and listened to? Do you need understanding? What do you need? It's hard for us to talk about our needs because older adults were not taught to need much, but to be thankful for everything they have. And so as long as you want, your basic necessities are being met, asking for what you really need, outside of that is seen to be selfish. It's not selfish to ask for what you want. It's not selfish to ask to be understood and heard. And children need that voice. They need to be able to say, okay, Mom, I need you to do more of this. Or, when you respond this way, this bothers me, but I prefer you to respond this way. And then we can somehow come in the middle. And so I wanted to have that conversation with a lot of parents because when I spoke to another parent and they were like, oh my God, my child can't speak to me like that. I said, there's nothing wrong with feedback. Are you afraid of feedback? Let me know in the comments how you feel about that. I really want to know because I don't want anyone to feel like feedback is a bad thing. You may not like what you hear, but it's better to hear it than to not hear it. Because at the end of the day, we're working on relationships. We're working on strengthening bonds. we're working on strengthening just communication in general, because this is the missing piece. This is the gap that causes so many things to get in between. When we loosen up that gap and it keeps expanding, there's room for other people to infiltrate. So what that means for me is I'd rather my son hear from me where I'm coming from, and that I'm able to hear from him where he's coming from, than from him to go to his friends. I mean, he will go to his friends for everyday stuff, but I can give him real-time advice, knowing his real issues and concerns. And I don't come from a place of malice, a place of, bad intent, a place of maliciousness, or any type of, thing that may harm him. I'm coming to him with great intentions. And so as parents, we need that. If we don't give our kids the conversation that they need and the understanding that they need, they will find it somewhere else. And the outcome may not be what we want. At least when we open up the floor with our children can come to us first because they trust us. And that's what I want. More than everything in this world is that I want the trust of my son. And I'm quite sure you want the trust of your children as well. I mean, you don't have to be buddy friends with your children. I'm not suggesting you be friends and they just be telling you everything that's unnecessary. But everyday things, their thought process, their decision making, things that are going to be impactful for them in the long run, they should be able to come to their parents and bring their issues to the table and be taken seriously. We're not always going to hear exactly what we want to hear. Some stuff I've heard along the way, I've had to gasp and I've had to process and then reconvene and come back to it. But I don't want to waver on the fact that my son can talk to me. Okay? So I don't know how you guys feel about it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe below. You are able to reach out to me if you need help having these conversations. I speak to schools about this as well, and I deal with families directly, okay? My website is www.coachkeishaspeaks.com. You have a great day, guys.